For decades, your doctor has likely given you the exact same warning. Watch your red meat intake. It clogs your arteries. It increases your cancer risk. It is just too hard on your digestion. And if you are over the age of 60, you have probably spent years feeling a heavy pang of guilt every time you order a steak at a restaurant or cook a burger on the backyard grill. But here is what most people don't realize until their health starts slipping away. The biological rules about red meat completely change after your 60th birthday. Recently, a massive new medical study revealed something that is quietly shifting how we look at aging and nutrition. The blanket advice to simply cut out all red meat is not only outdated for older adults, it might actually be accelerating the exact muscle loss, frailty, and daily exhaustion you are desperately trying to avoid. This goes against almost everything you have been told about your heart and your longevity. In the next few minutes, we are going to look closely at what is really happening inside your body when you eat red meat today versus when you were 30. We will uncover exactly what this new research says about the real cancer triggers, and I will show you the precise adjustments you need to make to your meals right now. Because the medical truth is, the danger isn't necessarily the meat sitting on your plate. It is what happens to it once it enters an older digestive system. Think about how many times the nutritional rules have changed since you were raising a family. First, eggs were dangerous. Then, suddenly, they were a daily superfood. Traditional butter was pushed aside for heavily processed margarine, until the medical community quietly realized the artificial fats in margarine were actually causing the heart issues they were supposed to prevent. It is completely exhausting. It makes it incredibly tempting to just throw your hands up, ignore the evening news, and eat whatever you want. But this is where real damage begins if we simply ignore the changing science. Because the dietary advice you were given in your 40s was specifically meant for a 40-year-old body. Once you cross into your 60s and 70s, your digestive tract goes through a quiet, invisible transformation. You might not feel it happening on a daily basis, but your internal machinery is shifting. Your stomach naturally begins to produce less of the strong gastric acid required to break down dense, heavy proteins. The digestive enzymes that effortlessly processed a thick, well-done roast beef on a Sunday afternoon decades ago are simply not as powerful today. And here is what most people miss until it is too late. When dense red meat is not broken down properly in the stomach, it travels into the lower digestive tract partially undigested. In an older adult, this slow-moving process can trigger a silent inflammatory response. It changes the delicate balance of good bacteria in your gut. This is exactly where the initial whispers of colon cancer risk begin to take root, and it is why the medical community panicked and told seniors to stop eating meat altogether. But as we are about to see, cutting it out entirely comes with a devastating cost to your physical independence. Quick favor before we go further. Drop your city, state, or country in the comments below. When I see where people are watching from, it helps me tailor this health advice for the seasons and the local food availability where you live. I read every single one. Now stay with me, because the story of what actually happens when you completely remove meat from a senior diet is going to change how you look at your dinner plate. Let me paint a picture of what this actually looks like in real life. Picture two neighbors living on the same street, both 72 years old. We will call them Robert and Arthur. Robert watched a terrifying news report about red meat and colon cancer 5 years ago. He got scared, and he decided to cut beef and pork out of his meals completely. He replaced his evening pot roast with light salads, a piece of toast, and maybe a thin slice of chicken. But here's what most people don't realize until the weakness sets in. Without the dense, highly absorbable protein and the rich iron that red meat provides, Robert's body began looking for fuel elsewhere. It started silently cannibalizing his own muscle tissue. It is a condition called sarcopenia, and it is the quiet thief of independence. Over 3 years, Robert noticed his legs feeling heavy when climbing the front porch stairs. He lost his grip strength and started struggling to open jars in the kitchen. Eventually, he needed a cane just to walk down the driveway to check his mail. He avoided the cancer risk, but he accidentally traded away his mobility. Now, look at his neighbor, Arthur. Arthur thought the health warnings were nonsense. He kept his diet exactly the same as it was in 1985. He regularly ate charred hot dogs from the backyard grill. He loaded his lunch sandwiches with highly processed, preserved deli meats. He ate thick, heavily seared steaks cooked at blistering high temperatures. This is where real damage begins. Arthur was getting enough protein to maintain his muscles, but the aggressive way the meat was prepared, charred, processed, and loaded with chemical preservatives, was creating a toxic environment in his aging gut. His joints constantly ached from systemic inflammation. His digestion was a daily struggle, and during a routine screening his doctor found multiple concerning polyps, warning him that his internal environment was highly reactive. Remember what I said earlier about how an older digestive system changes? Here is why it matters. Both of these men were rapidly losing their dignity and their physical freedom, but for completely opposite reasons. Robert starved his aging muscles of the critical structural fuel they desperately needed to keep him standing tall. Arthur provided the fuel, but he delivered it in a toxic package that his 72-year-old stomach and intestines could no longer process safely. Most seniors miss this trap until it is too late. They either suffer the frailty of avoidance or the inflammation of ignorance. This is why acting early and understanding the right way to fuel your body matters more now than ever. You do not have to choose between muscle wasting and chronic disease. There is a safe, clear middle ground, and a groundbreaking new study has finally mapped out exactly what that looks like. In 2019, researchers at Harvard University published a massive, long-term study in the British Medical Journal that completely dismantled the old rules about red meat. They followed over 81,000 men and women for decades, tracking exactly what happened to their health as their bodies and digestive systems aged. They didn't just ask if these people ate meat. They looked at what happened when people changed their meat habits later in life. The findings were startling. They discovered that adding just half a daily serving of processed red meat, we are talking about one single slice of bacon or one thin piece of deli ham, increased the risk of early death by 13%. But here is the critical distinction that most health blogs completely ignore. When participants ate high-quality, unprocessed red meat, the danger profile was fundamentally different. The researchers realized that the meat itself wasn't the primary poison. The real danger was what the food industry did to the meat before it was sold, combined with how an older stomach struggled to break it down. This goes against what you have been told by the evening news. The television headlines tell you that a simple steak is a guaranteed cancer trigger. But the actual medical science tells us the true trigger is a compromised, aging digestive tract trying to process chemically altered proteins. Think of your digestive system in your late 60s like a beautifully preserved classic car engine. It still runs incredibly well, but you cannot put cheap synthetic fuel in the tank and expect it not to sputter. When you eat heavily processed meats, you are forcing an older engine to process harsh chemical preservatives, specifically synthetic nitrates. Remember what I said earlier about Arthur and that silent, invisible inflammation? Here is why it matters for you today. When you eat cured or highly preserved meats, those synthetic compounds do not digest smoothly. Because your stomach acid is naturally weaker now, those chemicals travel down and sit in your lower colon. And when they sit there, they irritate the delicate lining of your gut. Day after day, this creates a state of chronic, low-grade inflammation. That localized inflammation is the exact breeding ground for cellular mutations. It is the very beginning of colon cancer. Most seniors miss this until they are sitting in a clinic getting a concerning test result. They think they are making a smart, frugal choice by buying packaged deli meats for a quick lunch, not realizing they are feeding that dangerous inflammatory loop. But it is not just the preservatives you need to watch out for. Even a high-quality piece of beef can become toxic to an older immune system if you make one incredibly common mistake in the kitchen. I need you to pause for a second and completely rethink what a safe dinner looks like. Because if you are over 60, The way you cook your food is now just as critical as what you are actually eating. This completely shatters the idea that a dark, well-done steak is the safer option. There are 3 specific preparations of meat, what I call the 3 toxic bites, that act like a fast-acting poison to an aging digestive tract. The first is the blackened char. You know that dark, crispy crust that forms on a burger or a piece of chicken when you leave it on the backyard grill just a little too long? When meat is cooked at blistering high temperatures, especially over an open flame, it creates harmful chemical compounds. When you were 30, your liver and kidneys filtered those aggressive compounds out with relative ease. But today, an older filtration system struggles to clear them. They linger in your bloodstream. They irritate your cells. This is a direct, proven pathway to cellular mutation. The second toxic bite is the stiff pan-fried edge. When you fry bacon or sear beef in a pan until the edges are hard and brittle, you are creating compounds that scientists literally call AGEs. This is where the silent damage truly accelerates. AGEs do exactly what their name suggests. They age you from the inside out. They trigger severe oxidative stress that stiffens your blood vessels and makes your daily joint pain significantly worse. The third is the processed cold cut. We talked about Arthur earlier. When you eat a cold slice of packaged bologna or salami, you are delivering a dense, chemically preserved block of protein directly into a stomach that no longer has the raw, acidic power to break it down. Most people believe they are making the safe, cautious choice by ordering their meat cooked very well done, or by eating simple cold sandwiches for lunch. But here is the detail that changes everything. By aggressively overcooking your beef to make it safe, you are actually destroying the exact, life-saving nutrients your aging muscles are starving for, while simultaneously creating cancer-causing chemicals on the surface of the food. You are getting all of the risk and absolutely none of the reward. So if high-heat cooking is dangerous and your digestion is changing, how on earth is a senior supposed to safely get the protein they desperately need to stay strong, mobile, and out of a wheelchair? The answer lies in a fascinating biological shift that happens inside your body right around retirement age. To understand how to safely eat meat again, we have to look closely at the remarkable way your body's internal plumbing changes as the decades pass. When you were in your 30s, your stomach was an absolute powerhouse. It produced deep, highly concentrated pools of gastric acid. You could eat a heavy 12-ounce ribeye late at night, and your digestive system would effortlessly break down every single gram of that dense protein. But here is the biological twist that most doctors simply forget to explain to their older patients. As we cross into our 60s and 70s, the production of that powerful stomach acid naturally slows down. The internal environment becomes significantly gentler. It is not a flaw or a disease. It is just the normal, quiet maturation of your body. However, this gentler environment creates a massive problem for your physical independence. Your body relies on a process called protein synthesis to repair tissue and keep your legs strong enough to comfortably navigate your neighborhood. But for this repair process to work, the meat you eat must be completely broken down into tiny, usable building blocks called amino acids. Remember Robert from our story earlier, the man who lost his mobility? Here is why his situation happens to so many well-meaning seniors. When an older stomach tries to digest a thick, tough cut of beef using weaker acid, it simply cannot extract all the necessary amino acids. The food passes through partially undigested. So even if you are eating a large piece of steak, your aging muscles might be literally starving for the nutrients locked tightly inside it. This is why acting to change your approach right now matters more than ever. If your muscles are not receiving those vital amino acids, they begin to quietly shrink. You lose the core strength that keeps your balance steady and your posture upright. The fear of a devastating fall becomes a very real daily anxiety, all because the protein on your plate isn't actually making it into your muscle tissue. Most seniors miss this vital connection until their grip strength is entirely gone. They blame their sudden weakness on just getting older, when the reality is an absorption crisis happening deep in their gut. But what if you could bypass this weakened digestion entirely? What if you could deliver high-quality, muscle-saving protein in a way that your older stomach can effortlessly absorb, without triggering the inflammation that fuels disease? There is a precise, dignified way to do exactly that at your very next meal. Here is exactly how you safely keep red meat in your diet to protect your muscles without gambling with your long-term health. I call this the Senior Protein Protocol, and it comes down to 3 simple, dignified adjustments you can make at the grocery store and in your kitchen today. First, we have to change the cut of the meat. This goes against the traditional American steakhouse culture you probably grew up with. But you need to skip the thick, tough slabs of sirloin, New York strip, or T-bone. Instead, choose high-quality ground beef, or cuts specifically meant for slow cooking, like a chuck roast. When meat is physically ground or slow roasted, the tough, dense muscle fibers are broken apart before you even take a bite. You are essentially doing half the work of digestion before the food ever reaches your stomach. Your naturally gentler stomach acid no longer has to fight to extract those vital amino acids. The protein is effortlessly absorbed, going straight to work repairing the muscles in your legs, back, and core. Second, we have to change the temperature. Remember what I said earlier about the blackened char and those dangerous chemical compounds? Here is how we avoid them entirely. You must trade high, dry heat for low, moist heat. Instead of throwing a patty on a scorching outdoor grill or searing it in a smoking hot frying pan, transition to cooking methods like stewing, braising, or using a countertop slow cooker. Cooking meat slowly in a rich broth or water at a low temperature prevents those toxic, inflammatory crusts from ever forming. The meat stays incredibly tender, deeply hydrating the protein and making it completely safe for an older digestive tract to process. But here is the one small change to your grocery list that most people completely overlook. You must pair your meat with a biological neutralizer. When you do eat a portion of beef, ideally keeping it to 2 or 3 high-quality servings a week, not every single day, never eat it alone on the plate. Always pair it with a dark leafy green like a side of spinach or a serving of steamed broccoli. These vegetables are packed with powerful, natural antioxidants. When they travel through your digestive system alongside the red meat, they act like a biological shield. They literally bind to stray inflammatory compounds and neutralize them before they can irritate your colon lining. It is a brilliant, built-in safety mechanism. For most folks in their 60s and 70s, this is the exact strategy that keeps them active, out in the neighborhood, and living independently on their own terms. You get the iron, the zinc, and the dense muscle-building protein your body is screaming for, completely minus the cellular danger. But there is one final, crucial piece of the puzzle we have to lock in before you sit down for your next meal. This brings us back to the biggest lie you have been told about aging and your diet. The truth is, red meat is not the inherent enemy of a long, healthy life. Ignorance of how your body works is the real enemy. We have to stop looking at our dinner plates through the biology of a 30-year-old. Because for most seniors, the real danger is not necessarily what is on the menu. It is losing the physical strength to cook that menu for yourself. You do not have to settle for weakness. You do not have to accept frail, heavy legs, vanishing grip strength, and a sudden loss of balance as just a normal, unavoidable part of getting older. By simply choosing the right ground or slow-roasted cuts, cooking them with gentle, moist heat, and pairing them with protective greens, you are giving your aging muscles the exact structural fuel they desperately need. You are shielding your gut from the inflammation that feeds chronic disease. Most importantly, you are actively protecting your independence. That person in the mirror, the one who wants to stay active, tend to the garden, keep up with the grandkids, and live life strictly on their own terms, deserves that strength. You have the power to give it to them, starting with your very next meal. If this video gave you a clearer perspective today, please hit the subscribe button. I share honest, science-backed health content for folks over 60 every single week. No confusing medical jargon, no fear-mongering, just the clear truth you need to stay strong. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.